A 5-year-old human saved freezing alien babies and changed an entire civilization. The city called Solace Prime did not feel like a city anymore. Towers stood like broken teeth in a dark jaw. Smoke drew black lines across the twin moons, and every wind carried dust, heat, and the bitter taste of fear. Sirens wailed, then died. Somewhere far away, something exploded, and a red glow rolled over empty streets like a slow tide. Sarah's Kyle moved through this ruined maze with 4 Valeri guards at her back. Her skin, pale with faint silver patterns, was smeared with ash. White hair stuck to her cheeks. She walked fast, breathing hard, eyes scanning shadow after shadow. "We keep looking," she said. Her voice was gentle but edged with steel. "My children are out here." "Minister Kale," said Commander Rogan, broad and calm even in chaos. "We must return to the shelter. Human units are pushing from the south. Drones report movement 2 districts away." "My twins did not learn to walk without me," Sarah said. "They will not learn to die without me." She did not slow down. The guards traded uneasy looks, then followed. No one wanted to be the person who told a mother to stop. 3 streets over, a boy huddled behind a fallen arch. He was small, maybe 5 years old, wrapped in a too-big jacket with one ripped sleeve. His name was Jace. He watched the sky the way a stray animal watches boots, ready to run. He had learned to live that way since the first week the fighting came to Solace Prime. Adults had vanished. Doors had stayed shut. Food had become shreds and crumbs. Jace had learned where the cans were, which fences had holes, which sirens came before bombs, and which came after. Tonight was wrong. Too quiet, then too loud. He held a dented protein bar and took slow bites so it would last. That was when he heard it. A thin, soft cry that was not wind and not metal. He froze. Another cry followed, like a bird without breath. He slid from shadow to shadow the way he had practiced. Past a cracked statue. Under a fallen sign. Around a dead delivery cart. The sound came from a pocket of rubble where a wall had caved, forming a small bowl. He looked in and saw 2 tiny shapes. They were Valeri infants, blue-white skin glowing faintly in the moonlight, eyes too big for their small faces. They lay wrapped in one thin sheet, shaking with cold. One tried to move and only made the sheet slip lower. The other cried until the cry turned into small hiccups. Jace stared, heart pounding. Valeri, the enemy, people had said. Monsters, some had said. Bombers, others had said. But these were not monsters. These were babies. He knew what cold felt like. He knew what being alone sounded like. He shrugged off his jacket. It was all he had that could be called good. It kept him alive when nights bit like knives. He pushed the thin sheet tighter around the infants, then folded his jacket over both of them, tucking sleeves in so wind could not find a way. One baby reached out with tiny fingers and caught the edge of the fabric like it understood. "It's okay," Jace whispered. He did not know if they understood his words, but he understood the rule. Quiet helps. Warmth helps. Stay. He sat in the rubble with them. When they fussed, he hummed a tune he barely remembered from a place he could not visit in his mind without hurting. His breath made small clouds in the cold air. The baby's hiccups slowed. Hours stretched. The city groaned and settled. Distant machines grumbled closer. Jace did not sleep. He kept one hand on the jacket so it would not slide. He thought of food. He thought of running. He stayed. Dawn came gray and sharp. Engines rumbled on the street. 4 Valeri hoverbikes drifted around the corner, lights low, weapons ready. A tall woman stepped off before they fully stopped, already moving, already listening for the sound she had memorized in her bones. Sarah saw the boy first, then the jacket, then the small faces under it. She stopped as if someone had placed a wall in front of her. The guards lifted their rifles a fraction. The boy did not flinch. He only put a hand up, not to block, but to show he would move slow. "I think these belong to you," Jace said. The words were simple, but they shook. He lifted the bundle the way he had seen careful people lift careful things. Sarah dropped to her knees. She took the infants and held them to her chest. Her breath broke. The sound she made was not words. It was a promise. Commander Rogan's shadow fell over Jace. The rifles dipped, confused by what did not fit their orders. Sarah looked up. She saw a human child with dust on his face and courage in his eyes. She saw her jacket on her babies. She saw the line between enemy and family blur until it meant nothing. "You may keep the jacket," Jace said, very soft. "They need it more." Silence spread, heavy and bright, the kind that changes rooms and rules. Cirrus wiped her face with the back of her hand and found her voice. "What is your name?" "Jace, Jace," she repeated, tasting the shape of it. "Thank you." He shrugged as if thanks were too big for him. It was cold. Engines roared again, closer now. Rogan glanced south. "We must move." Sarah stood, the twins safe in her arms. She looked at the boy. He was alone. He had given away the only warmth he had. She felt something inside her tilt, then lock into place. "Come with us," she said. Food, a bed, safety. The guards hesitated. War had taught them a map of fear. But the night had taught them a new map. Rogan gave the smallest nod. Jace looked down the empty street he knew, then at the woman holding the babies he had kept alive. He nodded once, the way people do when they decide to live. They put him on the back of a hover bike. He held onto the guard's armor and looked back at the place where he had sat through the dark. As the bikes rose, the city shrank. The wind cut his face, but for the first time in a long time he did not feel cold. He felt seen. Behind them, smoke rose like a warning. Ahead, the shelter doors waited like a question. And somewhere between, a new story began to breathe. The underground shelter beneath Solace Prime was carved from the bones of an old subway network. Its walls pulsed faintly with emergency lights that flickered like weak stars. Hundreds of Valeri families lived there now, refugees, soldiers, and those who had lost everything. The air smelled of metal, dust, and fear. When Sarah's Kale entered, carrying her twins and followed by the human boy, the noise slowly died. Conversations faded. Eyes turned. The hum of machines became the only sound. A human child in a Valeri stronghold was not something anyone expected to see. Commander Rogan moved first, clearing a path through the narrow tunnels. "Step aside," he ordered, his voice firm but calm. Still whispers followed. "A human here? With her?" Sarah ignored them. Her focus stayed on the small body beside her, the boy whose jacket still wrapped her children. An older Valeri woman approached, her skin marked with the pale silver patterns of age. "Minister Kale," she said gently. "The twins are safe, thank the moons. But who is this human?" Sarah looked at Jace. His hands were clasped together tightly, his eyes fixed on the floor. "He found my children," Sarah replied. "He kept them alive through the night. His name is Jace." The woman frowned slightly but bowed. "Then he has earned our respect, if not our trust yet." Rogan guided them to Sarah's private quarters, one of the few rooms with a functioning heat regulator. Inside, the walls were lined with salvaged metal panels and blankets strung across wires. It was not comfort, but it was safety. "Sit," Sarah said softly to the boy. He hesitated. The floor felt too clean, too foreign. He had slept on stones in an alley so long that softness made him wary. "You're safe here," she added. Jace finally sat, keeping his back against the wall. His eyes wandered over the strange shapes carved into the metal, symbols of Valeri faith glowing faintly blue. The twins slept in a crate lined with cloth. He stared at them for a long time, unsure what to feel. "Do you have family, Jace?" Cirrus asked quietly. He shook his head once. "Not anymore. The war took them. I'm sorry," she said. He shrugged. "Everyone loses someone." There was wisdom in his voice that hurt to hear coming from a child. Cirrus felt something tighten in her chest. She wanted to say something comforting, but there were no true words left for that. Outside the room, whispers spread fast. Some guards wanted the human gone. Others said it didn't matter, he was only a boy. Commander Rogan argued quietly with Counselor Drain, a strict official with cold eyes. "You risk morale," Drain hissed. "Bringing an enemy into our last refuge?" "He's 5 years old," Rogan growled. "If that's your enemy, maybe you've already lost." That night, Sarah stayed awake long after the others had fallen silent. She watched Jace curl up in the corner, using a folded blanket as a pillow. Even asleep, he looked alert, ready to run. The twins stirred occasionally, their tiny fingers twitching. For the first time in many cycles, Cirrus prayed, not to win the war, not to punish the enemy, but for understanding. Hours later, the quiet was shattered by alarms. A red light flashed through the shelter, painting the walls like blood. Voices shouted in the corridors. Rogan burst into the room. Sensors show human drones above ground. Scouting patterns have changed. "They're close to this sector." Sarah stood immediately, instinctively clutching her children. "Evacuate?" "Not yet. We don't know if they've detected us." But Jace, half awake and terrified, muttered, "They will. They always do." Rogan frowned. What do you mean? The boy rubbed his eyes. The drones, they follow heat and movement. The vents above the old metro tunnels leak energy at night. That's how I stayed alive. I used cold spots. Saris blinked. Cold spots? He nodded. Places where the machines can't sense life. They look for warmth. You hide in the cold. Rogan stared at him, stunned. That's correct. He tapped his wrist comm. We can use that. If we cut the power flow through the top level, the shelter will blend into the frozen ground signatures. He looked at the boy. You just saved hundreds of lives. Jace shrugged again, though his small smile betrayed pride. It's just how I survived. When the alarms faded and the lights dimmed back to normal, Saris knelt beside him. You're remarkable, Jace, she said softly. You think like a soldier. He shook his head. I just think like someone who doesn't want to die. Saris smiled, though her eyes glistened. That's how most heroes begin. The boy looked confused. I'm not a hero. You are to my children, she said. Outside, the distant rumble of war rolled across the city again. Inside the shelter for the first time, humans and Valeri shared the same silence. Not as enemies, but as survivors of the same fire. And somewhere in that silence, something fragile and new began to form. Trust. But far above the underground maze, someone was already watching the shelter's coordinates flicker on a secret display, transmitting data to an unknown source. The boy's act of kindness had saved lives, and unknowingly drawn the attention of those who would rather see every bridge burned. The next day, the war would come for them again, only this time it would not arrive from the skies. It would come from within. The next morning came dull and gray, like light filtering through sorrow. The shelter buzzed quietly with movement, guards exchanging shifts, engineers fixing power lines, children crying for food. Yet beneath it all was a new tension, a sharp edge that everyone could feel but no one could name. Jace sat alone in the corner of the medical bay, eating the first warm meal he'd had in months, a bowl of thin stew and a piece of flat bread. He ate slowly, still not used to having enough. Around him, Valeri healers moved with soft footsteps and glowing hands, their energy bracelets flickering with faint light as they treated the wounded. He wasn't sure if he belonged here. Every time someone looked at him too long, his stomach tightened. He could feel their eyes asking questions their mouths didn't dare to speak. Why is a human here? Can we trust him? Saris entered quietly, her silver hair tied back, the twins bundled in her arms. When she saw Jace, she smiled, small but real. You slept? A little, he said. Didn't dream. That's good, she sat beside him. Commander Rogan says the drones passed over without scanning this area. Your idea about the cold zones worked perfectly. Jace looked down at his hands. I just didn't want them to find us. You saved us, she said simply. You've done more for my people in a day than most adults in years. He didn't know how to respond. No one had ever said something like that to him before. He only nodded, his throat tight. But outside the medical bay, not everyone shared her gratitude. Two guards spoke in low tones near the corridor. A human boy? Inside our sanctuary? What if he's tagged? What if they're tracking him? He's a child. Children can be weapons too. The humans use all kinds of tricks. Minister Kale is letting her grief cloud her judgment. Their whispers slid through the halls like smoke, twisting, spreading. By midday, the whole shelter knew the rumors. That the boy was a spy. That he wore a hidden beacon. That the attack last week had been no accident. Saris noticed the shift. Eyes turned colder. Conversation stopped when she entered the room. Even Rogan, loyal and steady, seemed tense. At the command table, Drain, the same counselor who had questioned Jace's presence, leaned forward with steepled fingers. Minister, the council is uneasy. They demand we examine the human child. Examine? She repeated, her voice hardening. He's not a specimen. Then perhaps he's a threat, Drain snapped. Would you risk hundreds of lives for one boy? Before Saris could answer, Rogan intervened. Enough, we've scanned him. No tracker. No transmitter. Scanners can be fooled, Drain said coldly. I've seen humans plant devices in their bones. Saris's patience cracked. He saved my children, counselor. That's all that matters. Drain's gaze sharpened, and yet since his arrival our location was nearly discovered. Coincidence? The words struck like knives. Saris stood trembling with anger. I will not let fear destroy our humanity, or what's left of it. Jace heard the raised voices from the hall. He didn't understand every word, but he knew when people were arguing about him. He slipped quietly away, his small footsteps lost among the hum of generators. He wandered through the narrow tunnels until he reached the outer maintenance level. There he found Tali, a young Valeri apprentice who had smiled at him once while fixing the heat coils. She looked up in surprise. "Jace, you shouldn't be here." "I just needed air," he said softly. "Everyone keeps looking at me like I did something wrong." Tali hesitated, then sighed. "They're scared. Fear makes people cruel." He nodded, staring at the metal floor. "I don't want to cause trouble." "You didn't," she said. "You helped? Then why do they hate me?" She didn't have an answer. Instead, she reached into her pack and handed him a small glowing stone. "Here, it's a heat crystal. Keeps you warm." Jace stared at it, the gentle warmth spreading through his fingers. "Thank you." Before she could reply, a distant explosion shook the floor. Sirens wailed again, closer this time. Tali froze. "They've found us." But Rogan's voice blared through the speakers. "Stay calm. That blast was internal." Someone triggered a charge near the east conduit. Jace's stomach dropped. Internal, not humans. Someone inside the shelter had planted it. Rogan's men rushed past, weapons drawn. Saris appeared moments later, her face pale. "The power grid's failing. Someone sabotaged the cooling network. The heat signatures will spike." "The drones will see us." Tali turned to Jace, realization dawning. "Someone's trying to make it look like you led them here." The boy's chest tightened. "What do I do?" Saris grabbed his hand. "You stay with me. I won't let them hurt you." But as alarms blared and the shelter's hum became a roar of chaos, Counselor Drain stood before the gathered crowd and shouted, "He brought the humans here. He's their signal." The ministers blinded by pity. The mob began to turn, their fear burning in their eyes. Rogan tried to push them back, but the rumor had become wildfire. Jace clung to Saris's arm as she looked out over her people, seeing in their faces the same hatred that had once destroyed entire cities. And somewhere, deep beneath the noise, a small red light blinked in the control room. Proof that Drain had already sent a message to someone far beyond the shelter. That night, while the survivors argued and searched for someone to blame, the real enemy watched from orbit, smiling. Tomorrow, Solace Prime would burn again. Darkness fell early that night. The sky above Solace Prime rumbled like a wounded beast, restless and hungry. Inside the shelter, the air had turned heavy, thick with suspicion. The explosion from earlier had left 2 engineers injured and half the power grid flickering on emergency reserve. Saris Kale stood in the command chamber, her hands clasped tightly behind her back. The glow of the holographic display painted shifting shadows across her face. Red dots blinked over the surface of the city. Drone signals. They were closing in again. 3 units circling from the west, reported Commander Rogan, his deep voice steady. "We can't keep masking our heat signature much longer." Saris's eyes flickered toward the empty chair where Counselor Drain should have been. "And Drain?" "Missing," Rogan said. "Since the blast." That was answer enough. Saris turned to the technicians. "Seal the upper tunnels. Double guards at all vents. If Drain's working with them, he'll try to open another access point." "Yes, Minister," they replied, hurrying to obey. In the corner of the room, Jace sat quietly, his knees drawn to his chest. He could hear the panic in the voices, even when people tried to sound brave. He didn't understand all their plans, but he knew fear when he saw it. And he knew fear could turn friends into enemies faster than fire could burn paper. Tali, the apprentice engineer, knelt beside him. "Don't listen to them," she said softly. "They're scared, not evil." He nodded, but his small hands trembled. "They think I brought the war here." She hesitated, then whispered, "Maybe we can prove you didn't." Jace frowned. "How?" Tali glanced around, then pulled a small scanner from her satchel, a slim device with a flickering blue display. "This reads signal traces. If someone sent data from inside the shelter, there'll be a residue in the network lines. It'll glow red." Jace's eyes widened. "You can find who did it?" "We can try," she said. The corridors beyond the command room were dim and half frozen from damaged systems. Pipes hissed. Distant voices echoed. Together, the boy and the young engineer crawled through narrow passages where no soldiers bothered to look. As they moved deeper, the scanner began to flicker, faint at first, then stronger. A pulsing red light traced along the wall cables like blood through veins. "It's real," Tali whispered. Someone sent a transmission from here just before the explosion. They followed the trail to a sealed maintenance hatch. When Tali pried it open, cold air rushed out, and with it the faint hum of an active signal device hidden inside a metal panel. Jace leaned closer. The device wasn't human-made. It glowed violet instead of blue. Its design too smooth, too perfect. That's not Valeri tech, Tali breathed. No, Jace said slowly. It's something else. The realization came to both at once. Neither human nor Valeri. A third hand in their war. Before they could move, a voice echoed from behind them. Curious, isn't it? They froze. Counselor Drain stood at the end of the corridor, half in shadow, holding a plasma pistol. His once immaculate uniform was torn, his eyes sharp with a strange light. Not fear, but pride. Tali instinctively stepped in front of Jace. You did this, she hissed. Drain smiled thinly. You think this war was ever about humans and Valeri? No, it was about control, about who owns the future of this system. You betrayed your own people, Tali said. I enlightened them, Drain replied. War keeps us strong. Peace makes us weak. The ones who guide me, they understand that truth. Jace's voice was small but steady. You killed people. Just to keep fighting? Drain's expression softened almost kindly. Child peace never lasts. But conflict builds greatness. He raised the pistol. And now you've seen too much. Before he could fire, a low hum filled the corridor, and the metal beneath their feet vibrated. A shadow moved fast from behind Drain. Rogan, his armor dull and scorched from battle. The commander slammed into the traitor, the pistol clattering across the floor. The struggle was quick and brutal. 2 shots fired. One hit the wall, the other hit Drain's chest. The counselor collapsed, eyes wide, the strange violet glow fading from his pupils as he fell. Rogan turned to the children, chest heaving. Are you too hurt? Tali shook her head. We found the transmitter, Commander. Drain was sending data to someone off-world. Rogan crouched beside the alien device, his jaw tightening. This isn't human or Valeri tech, he muttered. This looks Proxian. Saris arrived moments later with a squad of guards. When she saw Drain's lifeless body in the glowing transmitter, her expression hardened. So it's true, she whispered. We've been puppets in someone else's game. Rogan stood. He's been feeding them everything. Troop movements, resource caches, even your coordinates. Saris's voice shook with fury. Then we strike back. We expose whoever's behind this before the whole world burns. She turned to Jace and Tali. You both did what my soldiers couldn't. You found the truth. Jace swallowed. But if they know we found it, won't they come for us? They will, Saris said grimly. And that means we can't hide anymore. Outside thunder rolled. But it wasn't weather. The first wave of orbital fire began to fall again, turning the sky into a furnace. Deep in the shelter, Saris held her twins close, while Rogan readied their defense. Jace watched the ceiling tremble and whispered to himself, They think they can scare us again. He picked up a small metal tool from Tali's kit. His tiny hand steady despite the shaking ground, but humans don't scare easy. Above them, the storm of war began anew, but this time the fire wasn't the end. It was only the spark of something greater, humanity and Valeri, standing on the edge of the same truth. And somewhere far beyond the clouds, the real enemy, no unseen, patient, waiting and smiled as the pieces began to move. The attack began before dawn. From beneath the shelter, the first tremors felt like thunder trapped underground. Dust rained from the ceiling. Moments later, a blinding flash lit the tunnels, an explosion so deep it seemed to tear the world open. Orbital strike, Commander Rogan roared. Everyone to the lower levels. Panic rippled through the refugees like wind through dry grass. Families clutched their children. Engineers grabbed tools and soldiers sprinted toward the defense base. The shelter's alarm screamed with a sound no one ever wanted to hear again. Saris Kale held her twins close as she ran through the narrow passageways. The lights flickered red, painting everything in chaos. Behind her, Jace stumbled, clutching Tali's hand to keep from being separated in the crowd. When they reached the lower command chamber, Rogan's voice boomed over the comms. They've locked onto our heat signature again. The orbital fire is targeting directly above us, Tali shouted. It's the Proxian signal device. Even after we shut it down, it's still broadcasting. Jace blinked breathless. What if... It's not just that one. Cirrus looked down at him, her face pale but steady. What do you mean? The signal. What if it's copying itself through the old satellite lines? Jace said quickly, pointing toward the ceiling. Like a loop. You shut one off, but others turn on somewhere else. Rogan's eyes widened. You mean the Proxians buried repeaters in the old network grid? Jace nodded. I saw the map once. Near the old train station, the place I used to hide. Cirrus turned to Rogan. Then that's our target. If we destroy the repeater, we cut the Proxians' eyes. Rogan hesitated. It's on the surface, no cover. A death run. Cirrus looked at Jace, the small boy who had already saved them once. Then I'll go, she said. Rogan shook his head. Minister, you're the last of the Valeri Council. If you die, the resistance dies. I'm not ordering anyone else to risk their life for what I won't do myself, she said fiercely. A small voice cut through the noise. I'll go with you, everyone turned. Jace stood there, his face streaked with soot, his eyes steady. I know the tunnels. I can get us there fast. You'll need me. Cirrus stared at him for a long moment, torn between fear and pride. You're a child. He lifted his chin. Not anymore. Rogan glanced at Cirrus. If we're doing this, we move now. Before they fire again, within minutes, the team was ready. Cirrus, Rogan, Tali, and Jace. They climbed through the cracked maintenance shaft that led to the old metro tunnels, the walls shaking as distant explosions echoed overhead. The tunnels were colder than ice, filled with the smell of rust and smoke. Jace led the way through the maze with the sure steps of someone who had survived there before. After an hour of crawling and ducking through collapsed passages, they reached the old train station. The platform was shattered, but the repeater tower still stood, a thin black spire humming with unnatural light. There, Jace whispered. That's it. Tali approached cautiously, scanning the structure. It's Proxian, all right. Energy shielded, self-powered. We'll need to overload it from inside. Rogan aimed his rifle. Then we'll blow it to hell. Cirrus caught his arm. Wait. If it's networked, destroying it without shutting the signal path might cause a chain reaction. It could draw more strikes. Then we disable, not destroy, Tali said, already kneeling beside the panel. But I need time. Do it, Cirrus said. We'll hold them off. Moments later, a high-pitched whine filled the air. Enemy drones, sleek and black, descending through the burning clouds. Red targeting lights danced across the ground. Rogan shouted, Contact incoming. Energy bolts rained down, searing the station floor. Cirrus raised a stolen human blaster and returned fire, the weapon trembling in her hands. Rogan took position behind a fallen pillar, his aim deadly precise. Faster, Tali. He yelled, I'm trying! She cried, sparks flying from her tools. It's got layers of encryption, alien architecture. Jace crouched beside her, watching the display. Wait, see that symbol? It's the same pattern as the heater grids back in the tunnels. What? They loop their power flow in rings. If you cut the lower one first, the others collapse. Tali blinked. That might work. She followed his direction, slicing into the glowing circuits. The light on the repeater flickered, then dimmed. A deafening explosion shook the platform. Rogan had taken down one drone, but two more swooped low. Jace grabbed a piece of debris and hurled it at a sensor light, distracting one just long enough for Rogan's shot to hit home. The second drone dove straight toward Cirrus. She fired. Once. Twice. And the drone burst into flame, crashing just meters away. The heat threw her back, but she stayed standing. Done, Tali shouted. Signal loop disengaged. The repeater went dark, its hum dying into silence. Above them, the fire from orbit suddenly stopped. The sky went still, as if the world was holding its breath. Then for the first time in months, there was no thunder. No attack, just wind. Cirrus sank to her knees, exhausted. Rogan lowered his rifle. Tali smiled shakily, and Jace, covered in dust and trembling, stared at the sky through a hole in the roof. It was clear, streaked with smoke, but beautiful in its own broken way. You did it, Cirrus said softly. You saved all of us again. Jace shook his head. We did. But far above the clouds, beyond the silence, something else began to stir. On a distant Proxian cruiser, a cold voice spoke. The humans and Valeri have located the repeater. Prepare Phase 2. They think they've stopped us. Now we begin. And deep beneath the ruins of Solace Prime, the heroes who had survived the fire had no idea that the war they thought they ended had just evolved into something far worse. The next morning, Solace Prime woke under a strange silence. The fires had died out, the skies cleared, and yet no one in the shelter celebrated. Quiet could mean peace, or it could mean the calm before annihilation. Cirrus Kyle stood on the upper balcony of the shelter's main chamber, looking at the horizon through a cracked viewport. The city was unrecognizable, a skeleton of steel and glass glowing faintly under the pale light of the twin suns. The repeater they had destroyed lay black and silent. Commander Rogan joined her, his armor scorched and dented. "Our scanners show no new strikes," he said, "but long-range intercepts picked up movement beyond orbit. Big ships. Unknown configuration." Cirrus turned to him. "Proxian." "Almost certainly," he said grimly. "They're regrouping." The repeater's loss didn't stop them. It only told them we're aware of their plan. Behind them, the shelter buzzed with cautious activity. Refugees repaired walls, carried supplies, whispered rumors. And among them, Jace and Tali sat near the generator room, their hands covered in grease, repairing a broken power coil. Jace worked silently, his face still streaked with soot. Tali glanced at him. "You don't talk much for a hero." He shrugged. "Heroes die first. I'd rather fix things," she smiled faintly. "Then fix fast. We'll need every coil running if the Proxians attack again." He looked up at her, his expression thoughtful. "Do you ever think they don't want to win?" "What?" "The Proxians," Jace said. "They could destroy us any time, but they keep hitting small targets. Drones, shelters, food convoys. It's like they're trying to keep the fight alive, not end it." Tali frowned. "You think they need the war?" He nodded slowly. "Like it feeds them somehow." Before she could respond, the command alarm blared. "All units and report to level 1. We have incoming transmission." Cirrus and Rogan rushed to the central chamber where a blue hologram shimmered in the air. Not human, not Valeri. The figure was tall, translucent, its face smooth and featureless except for 3 glowing eyes arranged in a triangle. "Valeri Command," the voice said, sharp and melodic. "We are the Proxian Collective. You have interfered with our operations. That was unwise." Sarah stood straight, her voice steady. "You caused this war. You manipulated both our species." The hologram's eyes pulsed brighter. "Your conflict was necessary. Chaos breeds evolution. Weak civilizations require encouragement." "You killed millions," Rogan snapped. The Proxian's tone remained calm. "Correction, we shaped millions. Your species were stagnating. Now you have rebuilt faster, adapted stronger. It is the Proxian way." Cirrus's jaw tightened. "You call murder progress?" "We call it balance." The hologram flickered. "Stand down your resistance. Return to your survival instincts, or face correction." And with that, the hologram vanished, leaving only silence and the hum of failing lights. Rogan slammed a fist into the console. "They're insane." "No," Sarah said softly. "They're methodical." She turned to Jace, who had quietly entered the chamber during the transmission. His eyes were wide but unafraid. "They think we're just experiments," he said. Cirrus knelt in front of him. "Then we show them we're more than that." Tali stepped forward, holding a data pad. "Minister, if they need us to keep fighting, maybe we can turn that against them. Use their hunger for war as a trap." Rogan raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "The Proxians feed off conflict and the energy, the data, the chaos," Tali said. "But if we fake an escalation, make it look like the humans and Valeri are about to destroy each other completely, maybe we can lure them out of hiding. Draw their fleet into a false battlefield." Cirrus considered this, a trap built from their own logic. "But it's risky," Rogan warned. "If the humans misread our signal, we might trigger another real war." Jace looked between them. "Then we don't tell them the truth. Not yet. We make it look real from the outside, but controlled inside. A fake conflict." Cirrus met Rogan's gaze. "He's right. We have to take that chance." Within hours, the underground base became a storm of movement. Engineers rewired communication arrays to broadcast fake attack signals. Drone decoys were sent to explode in abandoned sectors. Old mechs were reactivated to stage false troop movements. To the Proxians orbiting above, it would look like humans and Valeri had returned to full war. But beneath the illusion, both species prepared a joint strike team, a desperate alliance led by Cirrus and Commander Rogan. Jace and Tali worked on something of their own, a small pulse bomb, built from scavenged parts and the remains of the repeater core. Its purpose, not destruction, but shutdown. If deployed inside a Proxian vessel, it could scramble their neural network, severing the link that let them control their armies remotely. As night fell, the trap was ready. The false signals filled the air, and across the ruins, automated drones clashed in staged combat. Fire rose once more over Solace Prime, but this time it was a lie. From space, the Proxian fleet began to move. Rogan's voice came over the comm. "They're taking the bait. Every ship. We've got one chance at this." Saris looked at the small human boy sitting beside the pulse bomb he had built from scraps and courage. "You started this fight with kindness," she said softly. "Let's end it the same way." Jace nodded. "No more monsters. No more war." The ground shook as Proxian ships entered atmosphere, descending like burning gods. Every radar on the planet screamed as the false war lit the sky. And deep within the shelter, as the world above roared, Saris whispered the words that would echo long after the last battle. "For every child who ever gave warmth instead of hate, this is for them." The trap was set. The Proxians were coming, but no one, not Saris, not Rogan, not even Jace, could imagine what waited for them inside the heart of the enemy ship. For the Proxians hadn't come to fight. They had come to harvest. The sky above Solace Prime burned gold as the Proxian fleet descended. Enormous black vessels cut through the clouds like wounds in the heavens, their hulls glowing with pulsing veins of violet light. They were silent, no engines, no roar, only an unnatural hum that made the air tremble. Every radar, every comm line, every heart in the underground base screamed at once. This was it, the end or the beginning of something beyond war. Commander Rogan barked orders. "All decoy systems online. Maintain the false conflict signals. Let them think they've won." Energy readings spiking. Tali shouted from the console. "They're deploying drones, hundreds of them." Saris Kale stood tall, her twin infants asleep in a protected chamber deep below. Around her chaos surged, but her eyes were calm. She had seen destruction before. This time she intended to end it. Jace stood beside her, clutching the small pulse bomb he and Tali had built. Its casing was rough, mismatched metals welded together with determination. Inside it glowed a heart of blue energy, pure, pulsing, human-made. "They'll come for the signal core first," Saris said. "If we can get this inside their control ship, we sever every drone they have." Rogan looked at Jace. "That's a lot to ask from a boy." Jace met his gaze, steady and unflinching. "You said humans don't scare easy. Let me prove it." No one argued. Minutes later, 3 stolen Proxian hovercraft shot from the ruins like arrows, racing toward the descending fleet. One carried Rogan and Saris. The second held a team of Valeri soldiers. The third, smaller, faster, carried Jace and Tali. The cloud swallowed them whole. The Proxian flagship hung like a dark cathedral above the city. Massive and silent, it radiated an energy that seemed alive. When their hovercraft breached its lower docking bay, they saw rows of biomechanical drones suspended from the ceiling, half organic, half machine, dreaming in pulses of light. Tali's voice trembled. "This place, it's not built. It's grown." Rogan's voice crackled through comms. "Stay focused. You have 1 minute to reach the control core before the system detects you." The 2 children moved quickly through a narrow tunnel lined with pulsing cables. The walls seemed to breathe. Every few seconds, the floor vibrated with the thud of distant energy surges, like the heartbeat of a monster. At the tunnel's end, they found it, the central Proxian nexus, a vast sphere of energy floating inside a lattice of black roots. Holographic streams of data poured through the air like rivers of light. Jace swallowed. "It's beautiful and deadly," Tali whispered. "If this bomb works, it'll collapse their network link. Every drone will go dark." Jace knelt beside the sphere, his hands trembling slightly as he placed the bomb against its base. The pulse crystal glowed brighter, syncing with the rhythm of the alien core. 30 seconds, Rogan said in his ear. "You need to arm it manually." "Manual?" Tali's eyes widened. "That means someone has to stay behind." Jace didn't hesitate. "Then I'll do it." "No," she said fiercely. "You're just a kid." He looked up at her, small, dirty, brave. So were the twins. So was everyone once. "I started this when I gave them my blanket. Maybe I'm supposed to finish it too." Tali's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "Then I'll get them out. I promise you won't be forgotten." She ran. Jace turned back to the core. The Proxian energy shimmered around him like a living storm. He pressed his small hand against the bomb's activation plate. The metal was cold. His heart wasn't. Mom used to say kindness always comes back, he whispered. Let's see if she was right. He hit the switch. The world exploded with light. From orbit, the detonation looked like a sunrise blooming inside the clouds. The Proxian flagship shuddered, its black armor cracking as waves of blue light tore through its systems. One by one, its drones fell from the sky, silent, lifeless husks. In the underground shelter, every console flickered and then cleared. The network's collapsing, Tali cried over comms. He did it. Jace did it! Saris closed her eyes, a tear tracing through the ash on her cheek. That human boy just ended a galactic war. The flagship began to fall, slowly at first, then faster, splitting apart as it burned through the atmosphere. Rogan steered their craft away, the shockwave chasing them like a living firestorm. When the wreckage finally hit Solace Prime, the Earth trembled, but the sky was quiet again. Weeks passed. The war was over. The Proxians had vanished from known space, and their control shattered, their purpose undone. Humans and Valeri worked side by side to rebuild. Together they uncovered old truths, shared lost technology, and mourned what they had destroyed. And at the heart of the new city, rising from the ruins of Solace Prime, stood a monument. A bronze statue of a small human boy offering a glowing crystal to the heavens. Below it, an inscription read in both languages. He gave light to the dark, not with power, but with kindness. Sirius often visited the monument with her children and Tali. They would sit beneath the statue as the twin suns set, and Saris would whisper the story to her twins. The story of the boy who ended the war by believing that one act of warmth could change everything. Far above them, in the emptiness of space, a faint blue pulse still lingered. Not a weapon, not a warning, but a signal of peace. It carried one message through the stars, in every language that could understand it. We are not experiments. We are hope. And somewhere beyond the stars something listened and did not dare to answer.